Hey, 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 hey. Trying to put my stuff on Do Not Disturb because those notifications come in and disrupt everything. How y'all doing? Let me see who's on here at this time in the afternoon. Let me see. Let me see who pops up. Hey, let me know where you're watching from in the chat. I want to know where you're watching from in the chat. Hey, Felicia from North Carolina. Hey, pretty TB. How you doing? Hey, from New York. How you doing? How y'all doing today? It is Tuesday. How y'all doing? Hey, from Houston, Texas. I hope y'all having better weather than us. It's a little bit, we're getting the, what do you call it? What is it? California is getting really bad weather, and so we're getting the after effects of their weather over there. Hey, oh, someone says this title is too timely. Yeah, y'all. My goal is to encourage people to have very healthy relationships, not only with God, not only with their peers, but with their families as well. And so it's really important that I do lives and, just talk about more things, right? More life things that will help you live a prosperous life. And somehow, surprisingly, I never even decided that I wanted to do this series. It was something that someone asked a question last year, and then Holy Spirit started working on me about it. Then I had to ask my mom, if it was okay for me to share a few things and things of that nature. And here we are. So let me hop back in the chat. Hey, Shay from Brooklyn. As told by Amber from LA. Y'all still getting rain out there? Because we getting the rain from y'all. Catch what is this? I don't even know how to pronounce your screen name, but she says sun is shining, plus it's my birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Hey from Trinidad and Tobago. Hey from Brooklyn. Hey y'all, look, can you go ahead and like this video for me so we could get it started in the algorithm? Y'all know I'm working against the algorithm. They don't like to really push Christians channels, and I'm working against this. So if you all can help me get this message out by just hitting the like button, that would be amazing. All right, y'all. So here's what prompted this live. As you all know, if you look at the community tab, you know that I am interviewing my mother this Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You're going to want to be on there for that. So I'm interviewing her, right? And I realized that I could not just go into this live interview without giving you all some context about our relationship, about the ups and downs about it from my perspective, and also just giving you the truth, right? I really want to be transparent because I feel like that helps more people than us trying to hide behind things that we may not be too proud of, right? And so if you're on my emailing list, you know that you got an email yesterday, and I alluded to the fact that in the past, I may have said some things to my mother that I'm not necessarily proud of on this side of our relationship, right? And so we both have had to do work. We both have had to do work individually. We've had to do work together. And we are at a place in our relationship which is the best place we've ever been. But it didn't just happen because we said we wanted it to happen. We both had to work for it. And so today, I want to talk about my side, right? I want to tell y'all the steps that I took to begin healing the relationship with my mother and give you a little bit of insight into my upbringing. I know I've mentioned it in different contexts, but I want it to be focused in this context. So you all know, or you may not know, that I grew up in a single parent home. My mother was 17 when she had me. Single parent, right? And when I was thinking about this today, my grandmother was a single parent. Even though she was married at one point in her life, she died as a single parent. And I don't know if my great grandmother was a single parent or not, but single parenthood does run in my family. Like every woman in my family is a single mother, right? And so that's not unusual for us to see. And so as a result of me, knowing that I didn't want that for my life, but not sure how not to repeat those steps, I went away to college, right? I left Chicago when I was 18 years old. And I never been back. And that's important to the story because you need to know that my mother and I have not lived in the same city for almost 16 years, right? And I left Chicago because I was running. I was running from the family history. I didn't want to be a single parent, but also my mother and I, we didn't have a great relationship when I was in my teenage years. And the reason why, and I realize this now, largely my mom was trying to prevent me from being her, becoming her, right? So she was super hard on me. She pushed me. I had like a very strict upbringing, and I didn't understand it then, right? And it took me to have like a lot of conversations with her to finally get where she was coming from when she was raising me. But she had me at 17. So when I turned 17, our relationship started to change, and I didn't know why. And I don't necessarily think she had the language to tell me why it started to shift at that point, but it did. It shifted. It was clear, and I couldn't wait to get away from her. And I've said this publicly to her, so she already knows. Like, I was running from her. I didn't want to be around her. I went to the South, and I went to college. And at that point, is this conversation in our home where my mom, Johnny asked how old am I will be 34 this year. There's this conversation with my mom because there are 5 of us. I am the oldest of 5 children. Oh man, my broadcast went down. I don't know what happened. Are we back? Let me see. Are we back, y'all? Are we back? Let me know in the chat if we're back, because I don't know why. Okay, sorry. They don't want me to get this story out. But there were 4 generations of us living in the house at one time, right? So there was me, my mother. So the last thing y'all heard was me say that I was the oldest of 5. Yeah. So I grew up in a generational home up until my grandmother passed. My grandmother passed when I was in like the 4th grade, but there were 4 generations of people living in the house. My generation, my mother, her mother, and my great grandmother, right? And at the time I thought that was great. That was normal, but it wasn't normal. It was just that I didn't know that we didn't have money, right? I didn't know that we didn't have the finances, or the women didn't have the finances to be able to really like live on their own, right? So my grandmother passed. We moved to an apartment, my mother and my siblings and I. At the time, there were only 4 of us. And we moved to a 3-bedroom apartment. So that meant that I had my own room. My 2 brothers shared a room. And then the baby, who was a boy at the time, he slept in a room with my mother, of course, how little kids do. And when I went away to college, my mother gave away my room. One of my brothers got that room, and then the other boy, baby boy, moved into that room with them. And so the cycle continued, right? Once we leave for college, my mother gives away our room because, that we no longer live there in theory, right? We no longer live there, and also in practice, but that instilled in us a knowing that, hey, you can come home if you need to, but this ain't your house, right? Don't get comfortable, things of that nature. And I don't think that was a bad thing because it's taught us a lot of responsibility. Okay, so let me go back to the story. I went away to school, and I just knew that, we didn't have the best relationship at the time because I felt like my mom was cutting me off, and she did in a lot of ways. I needed to learn how to take care of myself, I guess, be an adult, learn how to live without her support in a lot of ways. And the reason, I know this now, the reason that happened is because my mom lived with my grandmother. She never lived by herself for real until my grandmother passed. So when my grandmother passed, she didn't know how to do a lot of things, right? She had to grow up real quick. So when my grandmother passed, she had to do a lot of learning. And so in her mind, she was like, well, Brianna cannot be behind the curve. She has to be prepared, and I have to prepare her. Whether we agree with her methods or not, her methods did work now that I'm on the other side of it, but it didn't feel good, right? It didn't feel good in that moment, and I couldn't understand it. And, I was upset about it. I was I was upset. I was going to say something else, but I was really upset about it. And yeah, that drew a wedge in our relationship, like even more. So I never went back home as often. I only went home like once or twice a year. I stayed away for a majority of our relationship, or a majority of in my adulthood. But I knew that, you know, I could call my mom if something happened. I just wasn't really sure if I was going to be able to depend on her if something happened. I hope that makes sense. So ultimately, I'm in my feelings growing up. I am mad that I'm in a single parent from a single parent home, a generation of single mothers, right? I'm mad about that. And it wasn't just my mother's fault, but y'all know the whatever parent stays is the parent that gets the tough conversations, right? My dad wasn't really around. So as a result, I'm mad at him because he's absent. I'm mad at her because I don't have stuff that I feel like I need to have. And so it's just a whole relationship of resentment at that time. I was also mad that I didn't have the opportunities that other kids had. And I think that's normal, right? You see your peers having experiences and opportunities and things of that nature that you don't have. And the human thing is to be like, well, why can't I have that, right? Or, you know, God, why didn't you give me this opportunity? And that kind of starts to play on your confidence. And, you know, it may cause you to do things that you probably wouldn't necessarily do, but out of need, out of desire, out of necessity, you begin to do it, right? And so for the longest time, y'all know I am relatively successful. For the longest time, my success has been predicated on what I didn't have. So I was stuck in a cycle of survival. And when you're in survival, you're always tired, you're always going, you're always striving, and you never take a second to rest because you feel like, hey, I may not have this, or hey, something may happen and I'm gonna be back poor, or you know what I'm saying? Like when you don't work through those things, they can show up in very unhealthy ways. Anyway, so I was also upset, y'all, because when you're in a single parent home, then this is the reason why I didn't want to go back home. When you're raised in a single parent home and you're the oldest, you have to shoulder some of the, responsibility, right? So because my mom would be working 2 jobs, that meant that I can't go hang out with my friends and I can't go do certain things. And I used to be so mad about that because I had to help watch my brothers, or I had to, help in the house, things of that nature. Like I was so upset. And I have to just say that I had a right to be upset. I would never downplay my feelings, because for a long time I did. I had a right to be upset, but I knew that, okay, now Brianna, what are you going to do with the anger, right? Are you going to just let this anger destroy you and the relationship and the possibility of the relationship? Are you going to let it fester and harbor, and you could potentially come up with all different types of diseases because, you're holding this stuff in your body? What are you going to do? And so I had to, make hard decisions like, what are you going to do? This stuff happened to you. And a lot of stuff, y'all, I'm not saying because it ain't that deep to say, but I had important decisions to make. So I have to say, like, for me and my mom, because she had me at 17, we grew up together, right? And I had the opportunity to experience the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But I don't know what it's like to raise a child at 17. Or I don't know what it's like to have 5 children as a single parent. I don't know, right? And so I had to come to a place to realize acceptance, like, this was your experience, Bree, but you're gonna have to do something to get out of this trauma cycle, right? Because I was stuck in a trauma cycle, and so many people get stuck in the trauma cycle with their parents. And I knew that I was gonna be one of them. I was gonna be one of them. And so I had to realize, y'all, in my mom's relationship, and these are not the ways that I changed, but this is just me talking through the process. I'm going to give you the 4 actionable steps that I took to heal the relationship with my mother. I had to realize that she did the best she could. Even though her best may not have been what I felt was the best, I know that she did do the best that she could with the wisdom that she had as a 17-year-old child, right? I had to come to that realization, like, your mother was 17. What was you doing at 17? I was up there trying to, I don't even want to tell y'all what I was doing at 17, but I shouldn't have been doing it. I shouldn't have been doing it, okay? And so, yeah, I knew she loved me. I knew she did the best she could, but I was still mad about it. I didn't feel like I was really hard on my mom. If I can be honest, I was really hard because I was reasoning from the place of the child, right? I was really hard on her, whether I said it or not. I knew that I was really hard and very judgmental and all the things. And it wasn't right. It wasn't right. And even though I knew it wasn't right, I didn't know how to correct the feeling. I didn't know how to correct, the relationship or how I was reasoning. Like I didn't know how to get out of it, but I knew that I was getting trapped, right? And I knew that it would be dangerous. And I just didn't want to repeat the cycle that my mom had with her mom, right? And I'm pretty sure she may go into that story on Saturday, but I didn't want that to be our story, right? I did not want that to be our story. And because I didn't want that to be our story, that meant that I needed to do my work, right? It doesn't matter. I had to come to the realization, like, it really doesn't matter so much of what the other person does as it matters what you do, right? You do. What do you want? Do you want the relationship or not? I'm getting ahead of my notes. All right, so let me tell y'all how our relationship started to mend. My siblings and I have this joke where we always say that no one's good enough for us. According to our mother, no one's good enough for us. And that's not true. But sometimes, it starts to feel like, when your parents like, I don't know about this person, you may want to watch that. We don't want to hear it, right? We don't want to hear it, but 9 times out of 10, she'd be correct. Anyway, I was dating this guy around 2019, 2020. I'm not going to say his name, but I was dating this guy that she didn't approve of. It was clear that she didn't approve of him, but I was tired of being single. I was tired of, being a single friend, the holy roll or whatever you want to call it. Like I was tired of it. And so this guy was a good guy. He just wasn't the guy for me. So as a result, I knew it, y'all. Subconsciously, I knew that this was probably not a relationship I should be in, but I just didn't, excuse me, I just didn't know why. Hold on one second. I just didn't know why I shouldn't be in a relationship. So I was trying to stick around and find out. Anyway, being in that relationship, my mother saying what she's saying to me, like basically telling me like, you know what a mother would do, trying to protect the heart of their child, trying to protect the destiny of their child, even, but I didn't want to hear it. I was trying to, I'm trying to get to the finish line. So that relationship, being in that relationship with him caused a lot of stress on the relationship with my mother. And I didn't realize how much stress it was causing or even why. And now that I look back on that moment, though I hated the moment and I hated us getting into it, it was really God starting to intervene into our relationship. Because at that time, I didn't even think that we had a problem. I thought that we're not the closest, but that's normal for mother and daughter. You know what I'm saying? Like, I thought that was normal, but it wasn't. It was not normal to be estranged from the person who carried you in their womb for as long as they did. That's not normal. That's not what God would want us to have, but that was our reality, right? And there was this conversation that she had. I remember this vividly. It was this conversation, I was in Chicago at the time. I think it was probably for Christmas. We went out to breakfast and we had a come to Jesus conversation about where we were, how I was feeling and things of that nature. And I remember just telling my mom for the first time and her hearing me, being able to hear me, right? Because this isn't the first time we've tried to have these conversations, but this was the first time that she was able to hear what I was saying and not take offense. It was the first time where I was able to tell her how I felt. It was the first time that I was able to tell her how I felt about some things that went on in my childhood. It was the first time that I was able to tell her about some things that I felt about us right in that moment. And, what I remember her saying was, I'm sorry, I'm here now, right? Now, in the past, y'all, I would just, when we would try to have these conversations, I would just, hold on. Lady Reese's, can you stop sending these kiss faces because they're distracting? Thank you. In the past, I would just blow up, right? I would just tell her, I didn't like this and you didn't do this and all this other stuff, accusation, right? That is what it was. Even though I felt that it was true, I went into that conversation wanting her feelings to hurt just as much as my feelings were hurting as a result of whatever happened, right? And whenever you go in that place of knowingly trying to hurt somebody else, whether it's subconsciously or not, you're going in with the wrong motive. So you can almost guarantee that the conversation is going to blow up, which it did so many times in the past, right? And so this particular time it didn't blow up because it wasn't me trying to accuse her. It was in a moment where I'm saying I had to realize, like, what happened in the past was not necessary for me to become who I was today. I didn't feel like it was necessary. And then I heard her say, I did the opposite of what my mother did for me, right? My mother didn't do X, Y, and Z. So I felt that if she had done X, Y, and Z, then I wouldn't have done blah, blah, blah. So as a result of what I didn't get, I tried to give you the things that I didn't get in hopes of you not repeating my steps. And that was the first time I had really heard that. Like, she tried to course correct so aggressively because she didn't want me to be who she was. And that's hard to hear, right? It's hard to hear parents say, I didn't want you to be like me. So I did all of these extreme things out of fear, but also out of love for you, because I didn't want you to end up like me. And it's hard to hear. And I'm like kind of choking up saying that, right? Because it's true. It's true. And so many parents do make a lot of those decisions from that place of, how can I give my child a different experience, but I don't have the tools to do it. I don't have the tools to do it. So I'm going to do what I know that I didn't get, and hopefully it works. Hopefully it lands, right? And I heard her at that moment. At that moment, I heard her, and I knew that I didn't know my mother as a woman. I knew her still as my mother, right? I didn't know the woman. I knew the mother. So I'm critiquing the mother, but it's the woman who's standing up trying to parent. You get what I'm saying, y'all? And so it was wrapped in a whole lot. It was wrapped in a whole lot. And so I realized that, okay, Brianna, at this point, right, because now God has both of our hearts open, I have to make a decision here. I have to decide, am I going to continue to lean into this relationship, or am I going to revert back to my victimhood? Am I going to revert back to the child who didn't feel like she got what she wanted to have? You know, I had to decide. And here are the 4 steps that I took to begin healing the relationship with my mother. And these are not set in stone. These are just things that, that I did, and maybe they can help you, right? And y'all, as I said, you all are going to hear from my mom on Saturday morning. But I just wanted to start the conversation today. So the first thing I had to do was I had to decide if I wanted the relationship. And I had to find out why I wanted the relationship. So I know that, sometimes we're like, oh, that's your mother. Oh, that's your father. Like, yeah, those things are correct. But sometimes we don't know, like, why should I want the relationship with my mother and my father? But outside of it's the right thing to do, we have to have those hard conversations with ourselves. Like, what do I benefit from having this relationship? What don't I benefit if this person goes away? Will I be at a deficit? Like, you have to do a lot of internal work to get down to that root and to that base level. And so I had to access the value of the relationship with my mother. I had to ask myself, what does she provide that you would never get from another person? And I had to ask myself those questions, right? Because I never actually thought about that. God wires us, y'all, for need. And deep down, I knew I needed her, but I wasn't sure how to need her anymore because I had to grow up fast, right? I had to help out in the house, right? I had went away to school. I had been living on my own I had been out of Chicago at that point for about 14 years, 13, 14 years. So I didn't know how to need. I didn't know how to need her anymore, right? And so under all this success, under all this glamour, under all these things, there was still a need. And I had to like ask myself, yeah, there are mother needs and mother wounds. There are father needs and father wounds. And if your mother or your father is not here, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that that is your experience. But if your mother and father is here, y'all, and we are only talking about mothers today, but I want to encourage you to do the hard work. Like God wires us for certain needs from them, right? So after much prayer, after much thought, after much journaling, like I was able to locate the deep internal need, the need that I had succeeded over, right? The need that I had survived over. I had to go in, and that meant that I had to do some hard work. And that hard work is hard work. I had to do some hard work, and I had to locate the need, and I had to say, I do value the relationship. I had to admit that to myself. I didn't say anything to my mother yet. But I had to say, I do value this relationship to myself. I had to admit it and allow myself to feel the feelings that came up with that. And then I knew that, okay, you need the relationship. You want the relationship. You haven't said anything to your mother yet, but she still shows up sometimes. And she still answers the phone when you call. Y'all might not get along all the time, but, y'all both want the relationship. Whether it's said out of your mouth or not, you both want the relationship. So the next thing I did, y'all, was I went to therapy. I realized that certain conversations just didn't need to be had with my mother anymore. Like, they didn't need to be had. I needed tools to work through whatever wrongs that I felt happened to me. And I wasn't going to get the tools from my parent. I was going to get the tools from a mental health professional. Right? And so for the sake of my mental health, for the sake of her mental health, and for the sake of the health and the future of our relationship, I went to therapy to discuss some things that just didn't sit right with me as I was growing up. That was a long time. We were on the mother topic for a long time, my therapist and I. It was hard work. It was hard work. Yeah, because I no longer wanted to talk about what she didn't do or what I felt she didn't do. I wanted to gain insight on how to move forward. And that is hard, right? That is hard, especially when you feel like, but I'm the child, they should do da 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 da. Well, if you continue to reason that way, they should do, what if they never do? You're left with what? A void, a hurt, what? What are you left with? So you have to do the work to level that power, right? You have to do the work and say, okay, well, if I don't get this from this person, I need to be able to live and progress and be okay and to heal and do all the things, right? That is what therapy has helped me cycle through, right? And so sometimes it helps because I didn't want to just keep rehearsing the bad things. I didn't want to keep rehearsing what I didn't get. I didn't want to keep reasoning. I didn't want to keep reasoning from that place in our relationship, especially in my adulthood, right? So it saved our relationship largely because I stopped talking to her about the problem, started talking to my therapist about the problem, which I had to pay for. But, it was worth it because I got unstuck. And I became more of who I was created to be. I became free. Like, sometimes that trauma, it binds you. Not even sometimes, all the time. Trauma binds you. Trauma steals from you. And the longer we hold it in our bodies, and the longer we hold it in our spirits, and the longer we hold it in our minds, it gets a tighter grip. And it chokes the life out of you. And I knew it. I knew it was choking the life out of me. I knew it. And I didn't want that to happen, right? And so I went to therapy. And I started talking to my therapist and crying. When I say ugly crying, I was ugly crying in there because I had never let the child have a conversation. And by child, I meant that the young girl who felt that she was mistreated, or the young girl who felt that she didn't get certain opportunities, she never had a conversation. I didn't let her speak and when I was growing up, right? But when I went to therapy, she had a chance to speak and say her piece. And the woman was in me was able to protect her. And the woman in me was able to console her. And the woman in me was able to go back out and then have the conversation with my mother. Not from a place of accusation, not from a place of blame, but from a place of, hey, let me tell you how this experience impacted me. Right? And so the third thing that I had to do was I had to want to know my mother as a woman. Sometimes it's hard to step out of the child mother dynamics. And sometimes, it's difficult for me too, which is why boundaries are so important. And my mother has gotten so great with boundaries with her older children. And sometimes boundaries are necessary, but I had to want to know my mother's story. There was so much that I did not know about her. There was so much that she experienced that I was like, after she told me, I was like, and you still living? Like, and you still like, after I had those conversations, and sometimes parents don't want to share their story. Sometimes they don't, but when I approached my mother about her story, I had to kind of ask her, hey, I don't know a lot about you, but I want to understand where you were coming from when you raised me. Can you tell me where you were coming from? And so when she began to tell me where she was coming from, such as, her not wanting to be me, such as me not wanting me to be her, and, some experiences that she had with my grandmother. And I remember that they had a pretty explosive relationship. I was better able to contextualize her thought process, right? I was better able to see, I can see why you did that. I probably didn't like it, right? But I can see why you did that. I can look through your eyes and say, that makes sense. And therefore, because I know it makes sense, like now I'm able to move on. Now we're able to move forward. Now, it wasn't overnight. Of course not. It wasn't overnight. But because I had perspective of the situation, I was better able to understand the woman, because it wasn't just a parent parenting me. A woman was parenting me. A woman who had her own story, who experienced her own hurts, who had her own struggles, her own traumas, ends up as a single mother of 5 children. I don't know what that feels like. But to hear it from her, and I know sometimes parents don't want to tell their stories for whatever reason, shame, or just doesn't feel like it's important. I didn't want my mother to die silenced. I wanted to know. I wanted to know for me, so that I would have some more information when I finally have children. You know what I'm saying? And so it took me a lot of efforts to hear her pass my pain, right? But you never really know someone until you start to know their hurts, their failures, their disappointments. And, I just didn't know. I didn't know. And when I did know, it shifted the dynamics between us. It shifted how I saw her. It shifted, what I thought about her parenting techniques. It shifted a whole lot. And that shift in my perspective also shifted the way that I related to her. And therefore, we were able to congeal a little bit better in our relationship. And then the fourth thing that I had to do, y'all, was I had to decide to forgive and move forward. Now, people do get stuck rehearsing the past, right? They get stuck rehearsing the past because it may make you feel empowered. It may make you feel like, hey, if I can hold this over your head, if I can hold this thing over your head, then I have more power than you. You'll never hurt me again. You'll never blah, 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 whatever the case may be. Whatever the case may be. But that doesn't help anyone in the conversation, in the situation, in the relationship. It really hurts you because you're holding on to this negative energy. You're holding on to things that, no longer really serve you. And so when you refuse to move forward, you actually hold yourself hostage to a place in time that no longer exists. And it can't harm you anymore, except that if you allow it to continue living there, right? If you allow it to keep replaying over and over and over and over again. And I had to really speak positively into the atmosphere about, the relationship we would have. And my decision to move forward does not mean that something did not happen to me, y'all. I want to be clear here. But it does mean that I value the person, I value the relationship, I understand what has happened, and I can move forward in compassion and understanding. Why? Because one day I'm going to have a child. And one day I'm probably going to reason from a place where it may not benefit the child. But in my parenting and in my purview, I may think it's necessary, right? I'm going to need that same compassion and forgiveness from my child. I'm going to need it. And this was a lot of work. This was years of work. And, the reason why I have not, necessarily harped about my mom and what she did, because it didn't matter. If my mother did not meet me where she met me, I was still willing to move forward because I valued the relationship. Now, that would have meant that that I would have had to probably move a little bit differently. That may have meant that boundaries may have looked a little bit different than they do now. But because I did the work with God and I did the work with myself and you did the work with my therapist before we started to engage in the heavy conversations, I believe that he too was preparing her heart to hear me come and have some of the conversations with her and to hear her have some of the conversations with me. Because how many of y'all know we not angels either as children? I said some stuff to my mom that I should never said. It shouldn't have never happened, right? Regardless, it was disrespectful. And she had to share some hurts with me that I caused her. Some traumas that I caused in her life. And it was tough to hear. It was tough to hear because y'all know we think our parents are invincible and they not. Yeah, and we just had to forgive each other and we were able to move forward. And so the conversation y'all are going to hear this weekend is a result of each of us doing our work individually and then coming together to mend the relationship. I don't know what she did on her end, but I know that parents' love is so very unique. It's a mystery, all right? I'm not a parent, but I just hear about the heart of parents. Even though if they don't know how to express the love, there is a love there, trapped somewhere. And I knew that the relationship, I mattered to my mother. I knew that I mattered to my mother. So based on that information, that's how we started to move forward. We both did our work. We both came together and now we have a relationship, a really great relationship, if I may add. And then this doesn't mean that it's not without, moments, because we're all human. We have moments with one another, but it's been the best that it's ever been. And I'm currently 33, y'all. So I want my story and our story of journeying through to provide you hope. If you are estranged from your mother, I did see somebody in the chat post like, my mother's birthday is my mother's abusive. Today's her birthday, I didn't reach out. I want to ask you, do you want to miss out? Do you want to reach out? I'm not going to tell you what to do, but do you want to reach out? And if you want to reach out and your heart of hearts, do what you feel is the best thing to do for you. But the fact that you wrote in the chat that and told me your story lets me know that your heart is still tied to the narrative. And yeah, so I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'm going to encourage you to dig deep and, do the hard work. All right, so let me hop in the chat. Let me hop in the chat. Let me see what y'all been saying. Let me know if y'all have any questions too while we in the chat. How do you break that cycle? All the women in my family have no issue getting married, but the marriages are always bad and abusive. Yeah. Well, I think it comes down to a lot of things, right? Decision making, it comes down to identity, and a lot of times it comes down to your relationship with God. Like from what place are you choosing, right? We all choose from a certain place. Are you choosing from a place of information? Are you choosing from a place of hope? Where are you choosing from, right? Because if you're not choosing soundly, you're probably going to continue to choose wrong. Or you're probably going to continue to choose people who don't have the best intent for you, right? Long term. And so I think when people get down to doing a lot of their identity work and get down to knowing who they are in Christ, and, you know, just where they're going, and are able to make decisions based on destiny decisions and not just, oh, he fine, oh, she fine, all of the things, we're better able to make better decisions. However, this does not mean that you're going to be divorce proof, right? Two people have to continue to do their work. But this does mean that you decided from a strong foundation. I know a lot of people a lot of people in my circle who are married, and they they probably should not have married when they married. I'll say that. They probably should not have married when they married. And as a result, they've had to undergo a lot of challenges. And something they always tell me is that, you know, Brianna, you're so wise to have done all of your work before you got married. You're so wise to have done the identity work. You're so wise to, you know, have found out who you were and all these things, and not, you know, try to rush into marriage and to marry as a result to cure loneliness. Because a lot of them have had challenges in their relationships because they weren't two individuals coming together. They were, I don't know what they were. I don't know, but they weren't prepared. They weren't prepared because they didn't do the work to find out who they were and their destinies, all of those things. And so I've heard a lot of people that I know admit that they may have settled. Admit that. And that's hard to hear, but it happens. And that's why I think doing your work, healing as much as possible. And you're not going to ever be 1000% healed. Let me just say that. You're not going to ever be 1000% healed. And you may not ever be 1000% healed in a relationship before you get in your relationship. But if you can do as much work as you can, you're going to fare well. If you can do as much work as you can prior to, you're going to fare well. All right, Benita says, sorry, is the challenge over? Right, Benita, the challenge been over since December 31st. I even did a live on it. So the challenge was over on December 31st. It was only 40 days. All right, Crystal says she was trying to make the best decision with the information she had at the time. Yep, and that was hard for me to understand, but she was. Tiffany says, yes, I'm a single mom of 5, 3 girls and 2 sons. And I was hard on my oldest daughter, and I didn't want her to be like me. So I understand exactly where your mom come from. Yeah, that just choked me up again. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That's hard to hear. I'm so sorry. That's hard to hear. But I am confident. Y'all finna make me cry my eyelashes off. I'm confident that she will be the woman who you are raising her to be, and she will become someone you're proud of, and she will one day rise up and call you blessed. She will one day rise up and thank you for what you have done for her. I believe that, and I just want to encourage you with that. Crystal says, makes sense. We often see our parents in that role only. Yep, we only see our parents as parents and not as people and adults and people who have stories and traumas and hurts and all the things. See. Someone says, I had to release my mom and understand that she mothered me from a level of her understanding. Absolutely. Absolutely. Mrs. Pooty says, this has helped me. I need to seek out a therapist. Oh, I'm so happy, and I'm so glad that you're taking the steps to do what you need to do. Because no matter whether you get it or not, you have to be okay. You have to be okay. And so I know it's going to take a lot of courage, thinking of talking about parenting and talking about motherhood and things of that nature. But you have what it takes. Right? You have what it takes. And I'm so happy for you. As Told by Amber says, I've always been close to my mom, but I realized lately I need a therapist for things I've been holding on to and secretly angered by. I don't want it to get in the way of the relationship. Yep, she and I have that part. You can have a relationship and close relationship with someone and still be mad at them. You can. It's so wild the way we can do that, right? And yeah, if you realize that there are things that you secretly, there are certain things that I would never say to my mother. It's unnecessary. For what? What are we going about this? What do I want? You know what I'm saying? Hold on. Let me do something real quick, y'all, because this person is irritating me. Okay. Anyway. Sorry, y'all. Those texts was irritating me. But you can be close with them and still be angry with them and still prevent a certain level of closeness and, camaraderie and love from going forward, right? You can. And so I'm so glad that, you realize that there were things that you're holding on to that you got to let go, even if it's just for you. Tough Cookie says, I know God is using you. I always reach out to her but last month she beat me to a pulp. Oh man. The more I love her, the more she manifests hate. Father, we just ask for divine protection for your daughter on this live. God, we just ask that you send a spirit of reconciliation between she and her mother, Father. We just ask that any anger that her mother may be harboring unnaturally or unknowingly, that she would not take it out on her children, but that she would take it to you and get the necessary help she needs. Father, we just ask that you restore your daughter in this chat. We ask that you will restore her confidence and her heart in the name of Jesus, and that you would help her to heal from the abuse that she has experienced, and that you would protect her. And if this relationship is not safe, Father, that you would keep them apart. I'm so sorry that was your experience. I am not someone who advocates violence. I'm not someone who's going to tell you to just continue to, keep doing that. If you experience physical harm, your safety is important. Okay? So I want you to know that. Amber says, this is so needed. Thank you. Tequetta says, thanks for sharing. I think that God wanted me to see this. I had a dream last night about my mom, which stemmed from past childhood trauma and abandonment. Yeah. If you had, I don't know. Yeah. He may want you to work through that, girl. He may want you to work through that. All right. Any questions, y'all? I hope to see y'all this Saturday. It's 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 a.m. No, that's not true. 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's when my mom will be on live. And y'all, this is the first time she's sharing her story publicly. It's been God has been doing some amazing things in her. She used to never tell her story. She was silent about it. You wouldn't be able to catch her dead talking publicly or using her gifts or even sharing her story. And she's experienced a lot. And so for the very fact that she's willing to come on here on live, right? YouTube live to share her story is a testament to what God is doing in her life. Because for so long, I think my mom has lived vicariously through us, her children, and as a result has felt unfulfilled and, upset with God about certain things. And parents make a lot of sacrifices. You all are gateways for us. You are gates, and, you all can feel neglected and left and, all the things. You can feel all of those things while still having to show up for your children. And so I just want to say thank you for doing this work, because it is work. Thank you for your sacrifice. We honor you. We love you. We wouldn't be who we are, majority of us, without you. We just thank you for taking on the sacrifice that you've taken so that we may live better lives. So your labor is not in vain. I know sometimes it may feel like it's in vain, but it's not in vain. Let me be a testament. Let me be a miracle, sign, and wonder that it is not in vain. and that you will have a payoff, and your children will not be your only reward. God has a reward for you that is for you, that has nothing to do with your kids. Okay. All right. That's all I got. Y'all got anything else y'all want to chat about? I don't have nothing else. Okay, well, it doesn't look like it. All right, y'all. Well, look, I will see y'all on live again on Saturday, unless I have another video come out this week. But this is all I have to really chat about. If you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel and you're just watching, go ahead and subscribe. If you're not subscribed to my mailing list, you're missing out on a lot of stuff, including the blogs that are over at BriannaWhiteside.com. So you want to go ahead and check those things out. And I will see you soon. All the parents out there, stay encouraged. We love you. As your children, we may not know how to say it. We may be mad at you, but we love you. We need you to keep showing up, and your labor is not in vain. And, you know, I speak for a lot of people. So, all right, y'all. I hope you have a great Tuesday, and I'll chat with y'all soon.